They told us we were lazy, lost.
Millennials had it bad. Generation Z may have it worse.
We're not walking away. We're running toward the cross.
Revival has been breaking out on college campuses across America.
Revival is on Jesus. They never walk alone, and they never stop, and they never stay silent.
Welcome back, everyone, to episode 7 of the Testimony Z podcast, a testimony dedicated to sharing the stories and testimonies of Generation Z and beyond. I actually talked about wanting to bring on some older, wiser guests here and there, and today we have an older guest with us. I don't know if older is the proper word.
Man, I feel honored. I feel so honored. Older guests. You can tell by my hairline, I'm older now. So
yeah.
I'm not that much older than Gen Z, though.
I had to do some powder before so the lights wouldn't.
That's right.
reflect
It took
too
a while
much.
to get all the makeup ready to go. If you're listening, you can't see it. You're lucky.
Exactly.
So,
But yeah, man, the question, obviously no one can avoid the question. It is Testimony Z. The question I love to ask everybody is, what is your testimony? I don't believe I've heard yours.
Yeah.
Maybe you've touched on it here and there, but
Yeah.
just testimony of how you got in your relationship with God,
Yeah.
and then obviously how you got into ministry. Ministry
Yeah.
is a pretty big step up,
Yep.
pretty big calling. So you want to dive into that?
yeah, I would love to. So, for me, I grew up with my dad was a pastor my whole life. Was actually my student pastor, believe it or not. But so I grew up in the faith around church, and I knew all the answers as a kid. And honestly, I got embarrassed if I didn't. I felt kind of like, as a pastor's kid, I needed to know the answers, or people would think that I'm a fake. But I gave my life to Jesus at 10 years old. I can remember it. It was October 28th, and I was sitting on the kitchen counter, and I remember it because it was it was before the devil's birthday, Halloween, because that's what I was always told. You know, that was the devil's birthday. I was like, and then I realized, no, okay, that's not all true. But the 28th is when I gave my life to Jesus, sitting on our kitchen counter, and I was baptized at 11. And through that time, for those 2 years between 11 and 13, we had some big life transitions. We moved from Atlanta, Georgia, to Auburn, Alabama, and so I was remaking friends. Things were shifting. My faith wasn't, at 11-year-old, you knew it. I knew all I knew to give God at that time. But there was so much more that I didn't understand about who God was, and obviously still learning a lot of who God is, because I don't think we'll ever know all who God is this side of eternity. Yeah. And no, we won't. We definitely won't. But when I was 13, when we moved to Auburn, it was such a blessing because we were in a college town, and I had so many people that were so influential in my personal walk with Jesus. And I was able to see college kids living for Jesus. It wasn't just what you see on movies of the party scenes and stuff. And I saw that it is possible to walk with God, and not only walk with God, but that college could be the catalyst for a deep relationship with Jesus and exploring your faith deeper. And I can still remember two guys, Eric Sewell and Michael Murphy, are two guys right now to this day that we don't talk that much, but they had such an impact in my spiritual development in my life. Of course, my family at home was primary in that, but having those outside people who really encouraged me and challenged me, what does it look like to walk deeper with Jesus? Because obviously I gave my life to Jesus at 10 as Lord and Savior, but really started growing deeper in my faith at 13 and 14 and so on. And then when I was in high school, about 10th grade, God started working in my heart. I thought I was going to play baseball for a long time in college and kind of go that route, and was really thinking more of the business world because I love money. And so I was thinking, hey, that's how I'm going to do it. I was kind of entrepreneurial in a lot of ways. I had a business. I had our lawn business, a large lawn business that I ran in high school that me and my brother started. Then we worked with some inflatables here and there. I worked as a public safety officer at a police department in Auburn to kind of pay through college and do all these different things to kind of set myself up for what by the world would say career success. And I felt in 10th grade that God was just kept pounding in my heart, student ministry. And not like anything else at that time, but student ministry. And because I think it was such a formative time in my life, camps especially, D-Nows especially, were catalysts in my spiritual growth, that I was like, I think this is what God's calling me to. And so God started opening up doors, and I went to college and couldn't pass calculus 2, and so I was like, okay, maybe business isn't my thing, but ended up majoring in communication and minored in the business world, but still love a lot of that stuff, business things. They're just it's interesting to me, and honestly, in ministry is a lot of business. There's so much business involved, and I think we're going to talk about that in a minute, but like balancing budgets and logistics and, all the things that communicating with people and how you do those things, it's so integrated. But I tried to kind of run from that calling a little bit because I really was chasing more of the world or the worldly desires of money and fame. And so keep going through college and had some more people really influential in my life discipling me, my college pastor, and started utilizing my summers. He was big on, you get 4 summers that you'll never have again, like you have in college, and what are you going to do with them? And so for me, I worked a camp out in California as a raft guide and as like a camp counselor. It was a Christian camp, and then that taught me a lot there. But also kind of solidified that, hey, students is something that is really my heart was drawn to work with. And then from there, I interned at First Baptist Opelika, and then I interned at First Baptist Montgomery, which then led me to my first job. I got a job offer to go there as an associate student pastor in Montgomery, and it was really neat to sit there and learn under some very awesome pastors, Pastor Jay Wolf, who's a legend, just learning under these guys and seeing their love for people, most importantly over programs, but just how they love people. And it influenced me even more so to keep striving after hopefully caring about the person and not just what that person can do for you. And so through this, my faith was being strengthened, and then God really strengthened my faith. My wife and I got married right out of college, and after a year and a half, 2 years in Montgomery, we moved to Houston, Texas. We felt God was calling us to Houston, Texas. And that was big. That's 10 hours from family. All of our family lives in the Auburn, Opelika area. And so we'd never gotten to do anything like that before, or never been that far from family. And it was very evident that's where God wanted us to go. And we went out there, and it was crazy. Our first 3 months there, Hurricane Harvey hit. Our apartment was right there on I-10, and I-10 was shut down. It was 16 lanes of a pool, basically. And, everybody's devastated there. And so it was walking through a lot of hardship there in Houston in a lot of ways, but learned so much through that. It was a hard time in ministry as well. Different culture, different setting. And God really, really stretched both Adele and I in our faith and how we viewed God. And so I think we really realized that God is provider and God is sustainer, because through that was what was getting us through some of those hard times. And so then from there, got a call one day from Pastor Buddy Champion here in Trustful, and said they were looking for a youth pastor. And we weren't really looking to leave Houston, but I say that like we knew that God was probably going to call us at some point. And it was just really cool how that's worked. And since we've been here, it's been really neat to see how God has stirred the hearts of a lot of students in Gen Z, as we're talking about in this podcast, because I believe Gen Z is going to be the most influential, most powerful generation that we've ever seen as far as the impact that they can have with technology and beyond. And so, people are always saying, well, I mean, we're hosed with this next generation. I truly don't believe that. That's why I'm in the business I am, is because I think that you guys carry so much weight and so much just ingenuity and creativity that you guys are able to utilize all kinds of avenues to get the name of Jesus Christ out. Like this podcast right here, like, you're creating content for people you don't even know who it'll reach. And so that's thinking outside the box. That's doing stuff that 15 years ago people weren't doing. And so that's kind of my testimony in a nutshell, as far as how God saved me, but then called me into ministry and to where we're at today here as a student minister. So
I think it's a great testimony, because it really shows that you hear it all the time with people who say, oh, I grew up in a Christian household. Yeah. And a lot of people, they think these testimonies have to be these crazy, elaborate, like, stories. But, I mean, you just gave a whole testimony of how you grew up in a Christian household, but yet there's still stories of struggle, of times of growth, which I think, going into the times of struggle, I think that's when your faith grows the most.
Absolutely.
Is in hardships.
Absolutely.
I was thinking the other day, I can't remember what made me think about it, but I was thinking, like, life, it shouldn't be, and it isn't. Life is not some lateral line. Life should be up and down. And I think some people, like, especially in the faith, I see it a lot in my generation and in the youth in general. you see people who they give their life to Jesus, they would get baptized, and then things get hard after that, which
Yeah.
is going to.
Yep.
And then they go down and they just stay there.
Yep.
And they're like, man, like this isn't what I thought it was going to be. Like this
Yeah.
isn't fun.
Yeah.
Things aren't going my way all the time. Like it's not magical like I thought it would be.
Absolutely.
And that's just
And you can't, you can't live on Mount Everest. You know, 'cause
Exactly.
you'll die if you stay up there the whole time. And like, God didn't create us to live on that mountaintop every day. Like, it is often those valleys that I feel like is where I learn the most. But those valleys don't stay forever. And that is also like, if you're consistently like getting into the Word of God, you're gonna continue. You're gonna grow. There's gonna be times of ups and downs, hard times. Like I'm just coming out of a pretty hard season right now, of just life, and it's neat because like my time with Jesus has stayed the same, but the circumstances are still gonna be hard. You know, it's not like I did anything wrong to be punished by any of these things. It's just that's life, and it's hard.
I think that's something too that gets misunderstood is people can read the same amount, pray
Yep.
the same, and their relationship with God stays the same, but yet they can go through 3 weeks or like a month and a half, 2 months of just hardship.
Yep.
And they ask themselves, like I've caught myself
Yeah.
doing it plenty of
Yeah.
times. I'm sure you
Yeah.
have, where you're like, man, like I'm doing everything right. I'm doing everything that I
Right.
should be doing.
Right.
Like, why is everything falling apart around me?
Yeah.
But it's like, I mean, you can't expect.
Yeah,
like
it's
you
that
said.
that works mentality easily gets into our brains, you know, of just, and that's what it leads to is I'm working to try to be close to God. Well, yeah, yes, but like at the same time, there's things that are going to happen that you're out of our control, but what's in our control is us prioritizing our time personally each day, and that does get hard. I mean, with kids and with jobs and
Yeah.
school homework and all those things, it pops up, but it's never going to be easy. Things that you prioritize are never necessarily easy. So,
And just like with anything, any kind of passion you have in life, whether it be football, whether it be business, I want to
Yeah.
dive into that because I loved how you mentioned the business
Yeah.
side of things. So I do want to touch on that. But anything that you're passionate about, anything that you love doing, media,
Yeah.
content, like there has
Yeah.
still been times where I'm like, man, like this sucks. Like it'd
Yeah.
be so easy to pack up the camera. It'd be so easy to just quit filming videos and not worry about any of it. But you get through those points, and like it's that up and down.
up and down.
And that's just how it is for your relationship too. Like it's not gonna be easy. It's not supposed to be easy. But if you love something, I think it's a great example of love. Like when you love something, it doesn't matter
Right.
if maybe you wake up in the morning and you don't have that fire to go film a video,
Yeah.
but you still go film a video. You still do it because you love it.
That's right.
And give it 2 days down the road, you're gonna
That's right.
be excited to get up and go film
Right.
a video. Same thing with God.
Exactly.
It's just how it is. But I wanted to touch in, you mentioned business and
Yeah.
you mentioned love money. And I actually had a funny story because I love entrepreneurship.
You're good at it. Yes.
I love it. But the funny thing is that now it's great to be able to say I have a media business that's relatively doing pretty well for 17. But I always tell people, I always remember the first business I started because I started doing landscaping at 13. I attempted to start a landscaping business at I think 14. It failed miserably because I was horrible at talking to people, which is crazy to think. Like I'm right here now making a podcast, and my first business failed because I was terrible at talking
Here
to
we
people.
are.
Exactly, because landscaping was one of those jobs where you could just put headphones in, put your head down, and you work all day. Well, when you get into trying to make a business out of it, and you got to go knock on doors and talk to people, I was horrible at it, atrocious. And then my second one was pressure washing. And I'd kind of gotten a little better at talking to people. First one failed because I couldn't communicate with people. Second one failed because logistics. I couldn't do good with logistics. I couldn't manage my time well. I didn't realize the resources that are required and all that, and it just failed miserably. And then the third one was media. And when I got into media, going to car shows, I didn't even get into media intending. And this is crazy how God's plans work out because we're here right now. But when I first got into media, the only reason I wanted to get into media was, and I haven't told many people this, but it was because I wanted to be around the money. I wanted to go do car photography at these car shows around all these CEOs and millionaires with these nice cars. Well, then I fell in love with photography, and I kind of fell in love with the scene. And then I started filming football, and I was like, man, I really like video. And so then I got into it and really started taking it more serious and built it into a business and now a podcast show and just TikTok clips, Instagram clips, trying to get content out. And it's just crazy how it all started with just wanting to be around the money, wanting to be in the entrepreneur mindset. And we're going to dive into this later, how that I believe with me and with you, it's fed into the logistics side of being able to work with ministry, because there's a lot that doesn't get talked about
That's
behind
right.
the scenes.
Yeah, tons, tons.
Yeah, man. I guess now would be a perfect time to transition into logistics side.
Yeah.
Because how long have you been at First Baptist?
8 years this next month.
8 years.
So, been a long time. Your whole middle school and high school career.
Pretty much, yeah. And even elementary.
Yeah, I guess, right at the end of your elementary school. That's crazy. So, yes, I am old back to the beginning of this podcast.
Yeah. But logistics side of everything, because it's something that doesn't get talked about. And I know y'all mentioned with Camp Coe. I wanted to dive into, when you first came to First Baptist, what were some of the events that y'all had going on at that time?
Yeah, they had started. There was camp going on. There was a camp, and there D-Now was a thing at that time. I wouldn't say it was like the biggest bread and butter, like as far as it wasn't a huge emphasis on some of those things. And like I told y'all at the beginning, camp and D-Nows, those were very pivotal in my spiritual journey. And so that's one reason that there's been a lot of emphasis on that. There's also evangelism. I think is super important, something in my heart that leans towards heavily. And so that's when it was those things were kind of going. And so then we started really went back to a guy named Wade Morris. Wade was a mentor of mine. He passed away in COVID. And 2019, he did our first D-Now here. And he challenged us. 19 students were saved at that D-Now. And I just remember standing there being like, I've never seen this before. This is crazy. And he challenged that, hey, you always need to be giving invitations for people. You always need to be sharing the gospel and giving invitations. And it was amazing what happened when you start trying to obey what God tells us in Matthew 28 there, to go and make disciples and tell people about him. And so that's kind of where this started winding up and started going. And then, fast forward a few years down the road, and what was one time running, we had roughly 200 students coming back to D-Now back. Our first D-Now was 317 students there in 2019. And through a lot of prayer, but I'm not saying this to talk about numbers, I'm saying this to talk about to get to the point of logistics and the importance of logistics, because we went from 317 to this past movement weekend, we had right at 800 students plus 160 college kids, and then you got your leaders. So you're moving around anywhere from 1,000 to 1,100 people on a weekend for worship and eating and transportation and all those things. And so with that, logistics got a lot harder. And the same thing with camp. We started out with camp. We had to partner with another church. If you remember, we partnered with another church for a while just so we could meet the minimum requirements to be able to rent that camp by ourselves. And now we're sitting on a thing where we got full for camp in January this year. And which is it's good, but it's also bad because it means people are being turned away from camp. So once again, you're going a whole week, and we're going to have 720 people that we're responsible for to move and to make sure schedules are working and
make sure they don't get eaten by bears.
Make sure they actually eat their own food. So yeah, there's all these logistics that come with those numbers. It doesn't matter what number a group is in your group. You should always be focused on making sure things are planned out well. But there's also not much margin for error when you've got those kind of numbers to deal with. So logistics is something that we spend ungodly amounts of time on. I told you just a minute ago, my day-to-day has been logistics for camp and for another conference that I'm a part of. And so it's something that's always on our minds. You're always thinking every week, 52 weeks of the year, we're either talking about a camp, or we're talking about a movement weekend, or we're talking about a car bash event or a dodgeball event, or whatever it is. There's constantly going to be having something we're talking about with logistics. So it's a lot.
I definitely couldn't even imagine dealing with 800 people.
Yeah.
High school revival event that we had was rough in itself. And we had it spread across a team of 6 people.
Yeah.
And even then it was hard.
Yeah.
But I know you mentioned having it be a big part of your testimony, and now being able to see it spread out into more areas. How is that, I guess I want to say, aimed and motivating? Because I guess it can be hard.
Yeah.
I'm sure it sucks sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
All the time.
For sure. You usually hear about all the bad things you did, the mistakes you made. That's usually what gets pointed out first. But the aim for me was, like I said a minute ago, it was such a pivotal moment in my life. I can remember beach camp my 9th grade year. Just the group of guys that I got circled up with, and just the impact that those guys ran with. We ran through high school together, like after Jesus, and we went to different schools, but like we stayed strong together. And I just knew what I had there, and I want students to be able to experience that in high school, that there is more than partying, that there is more than being popular, and that your identity does not come from those things, and that realistically in high school, like, you're going to move on in life, and a lot of people, I mean, aren't friends with many friends from high school once they graduate high school, and that's the reality of how that works, but I just want people to see there's bigger things out there, for our students to see there's more out there outside of these 4 years, these 6 years of school that they're in. And so if that means that my logistics, not mine, but our team's logistics of running things is the avenue that some kid can focus on Jesus better, then we're all for it. And we don't want anything to ever take away from Jesus when we're doing these things. And so you might not think about it, but what goes into planning a service, so planning camp services, that gets done in March. And you're planning out services, but you also have to leave room for the Holy Spirit, because he might completely change everything that you're doing. And you might have to completely pivot to what it is. We had that happen in 2021. It was one of the coolest moves of God we've seen. We had stuff planned out. I'm a big planner, so we planned a year and a half out our speaker, and he backed out a month before. And so it really made us, okay, we've been running on our own plans, but we had not turned to God fully. And so that was a good lesson that you always need to be seeking God first and with the direction you're going, and then do your work. Do the work that you have placed in front of you, because I'm a firm believer that it needs to be done with excellence. We need to work hard. It needs to be done with excellence. Our team runs on that motto. Like, if you're working on our team, you're going to work hard. You're going to work long, long hours, and you're going to make sure that things are done well, because if you're in a service and you sit there for 35 seconds awkwardly because you don't know what's next, we missed it, because then our distraction comes in, and Satan loves to steal with distractions. And so anything we can do to avoid those things it goes all the way back to logistics, and how we operate that. So
I actually wanted to dive into that. I mean, you naturally did it great, but because I wanted to ask because I know how stressful it can be doing logistics, and how you managed, or how you try to manage and work with the team to still keep God at the center of it,
right.
Still trust in God and his plan. Because it's so easy, especially as men, to try to just want to take full control of everything.
Absolutely.
And do it yourself.
Absolutely.
But that causes problems sometimes.
Yeah. And I'm very type A, and I like things to be done very orderly. And we learned that in 2021. That's where this Jesus movement that we've ripped on all our shirts here in the Chestville area for a long time now, that's what I was birthed out of, is because a guy, what you call a revivalist, he's also a pastor, Dr. Michael Catt, he passed away recently, and on the phone call with him, as we were trying to figure these things out, we talked to him and like 4 other guys who were out of that Jesus movement of the 70s. He said, this could be the first generation that dies that's not experienced a Jesus movement. And from that moment on, that was what stuck with us, is because we had been so focused on our plans that we didn't allow room for a Jesus movement. We were not allowing room. And so that's something we've adopted now, that all of our events are prayed over heavily, and themes are thought out heavily and prayed through months in advance. And there's prayer. We pray every week leading up to these things, and Wednesday nights, and all the little logistics, like, they're prayed over, they're thought over, and we always have the freedom to pivot if we feel like God is calling us to somewhere else, because ultimately that's what matters most. We can do our best to plan, but we've got to be able to pivot. And so I think that's a good life lesson that I've learned, is prepare hard, but be flexible.
Exactly.
So
it's the word we always use in the media, is that it doesn't matter how hard you plan, you prepare for the unexpected variable. Anytime you show up somewhere, a problem's going to come up. I'm sure there's been plenty of times. I want to say I've heard of some.
Lots of times. If it's a mission trip, it's never gone well for me, because
or like where we pull up to camp on the buses,
and
as soon as we get there, problems come up,
right.
And you're scrambling around,
right.
Trying to fix it last second.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned, going in and giving it everything, putting in the effort. And I loved how you said, praying to God and leaving it in his hands, but also putting in the work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's the great example I've heard of, like, you can pray for an A on a test, but if you don't study, you're not getting an A on a test.
That's right.
And I think that's so important with planning events, is like, you still have to put in the work.
Mm-hmm.
I like to tell my watch group kids sometimes, it's like, Like if there is not days where you're going home completely exhausted, completely drained, you're not doing something right.
Yeah. Yep.
Because it will drain you.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
very exhausting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's exhausting, but also very rewarding.
Exactly.
And so,
it's
and
awesome.
like a whole other side of logistics that we don't think about is like mission trips. That's a whole other world of logistics that are
I can only
just
imagine.
the hardest. Those are the hardest.
Because weren't we were planning on filming an episode the Friday before y'all left
Yep.
for Costa Rica, and we
Yep.
had to reschedule it because things
we-
were so.
We ended up pivoting because we
Yeah.
ended up leaving and spending all night at the airport because TSA was backed up so long. So, you just always got to be flexible and be able to make the moves, and
Oh yeah.
you never know what's going to bring.
And that's where looking back on past experiences and seeing how God's moved. Like there's so many times where I can look back and be like, okay, well when I started doing landscaping, like that taught me work ethic. It taught me being able to put my head down and work, and that's fed into so many other avenues in my life.
Yeah.
Also failing my first business because I can't communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I would have told someone that now, never would have believed that I can't hold a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was at the beach for spring break, and it was just me and my mom, and I met random people from all over the place because of how extroverted, how much I love talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
Me 4 years ago, never would have done that.
Yeah.
And so it's crazy to see how through life experiences, through going in the car scene, and with logistics in a car scene is a disaster because you'll schedule something with someone 3 weeks out, 24 hours before it comes up, and they're like, hey, like a lot of these people own businesses. They're like, hey, I got a meeting that came up last minute. We're going to have to reschedule sometime next month. And you're constantly moving around. Well, now that's fed into podcast scheduling.
Yep.
That's fed into dealing with businesses and getting episodes out, getting reels out, cutting up content. That kind of stuff is all fed in. And when you look at hindsight of how everything's led to this moment, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
And I loved how you mentioned going to Houston, Texas, feeling like getting called there. And I think I would like to say 99% of the time, if God calls you to do something or to go somewhere, you don't know why he's doing it.
Yeah, and it's going to be uncomfortable. It
Exactly.
could be uncomfortable.
And I remember, so we just did a high school revival.
Yep.
Well, the high school revival last year, I remember showing, this is another thing too, of like planning these events. I think it's so easy to get caught up in the event and not on the Jesus movement, on what it's supposed to be. Of like, okay, well, we got this schedule, like, let's make sure everything goes right how it's supposed to. And I remember showing up at this high school revival event, the first one last year. I didn't have to do any of the logistics on it. Amen. Someone else, another senior dealt with it last
That's
year.
right.
So I didn't know any of the behind the scenes, really. I just had to send my slides in, and that was it. And I remember getting up and speaking, and I think I was the first speaker. Well, I sit down, and we go through this service. Well, the last speaker gets up, and I believe he was talking about, I think, getting into God's will, something like that. And I just remember sitting in the crowd, and what nobody knew at the time was that like 3 weeks before, about a month before, in prayer, I used to do motocross. I used to ride. I was planning on getting into racing that summer. Like, I loved it. I loved my bike. And I remember him up there talking about, like when God puts something in your heart, like you have to obey. Like you shouldn't push it off. You shouldn't ignore it. And I remember thinking like, man, like 3 weeks ago in prayer, I remember asking like, what are some things I need to get rid of in my life? What are some distractions? And there's about 3 or 4 times in my life where something's been very clear to me of like I think, obviously you may not always hear God's voice audibly, but you know when God's talking to you. You feel it in your gut. You just feel it. And this is one of the times where it was so clear of like your dirt bike. Like you need to get out of your dirt bike. And that sucked. And I remember I pushed it off. I ignored it. I was like, oh no. I was like, I can keep doing it a little longer. Like surely it's not going to be that bad. And I remember being at this high school revival and he was talking, and we had a time of prayer after, and I just remember breaking down at the end, like in this back room. Nobody saw me, just breaking down like shoot, like I've been pushing this all. I don't know why he wants me to do this. This is gonna suck. My parents are gonna be pissed because I think we had just put we had just rebuilt the engine on it. It blew up. We just rebuilt the engine for like $2,300 of this race engine, and it was ready to go for summer. And then here I was coming home, like, hey, I need to list the bike on Facebook Marketplace. And I went the next day, I cleaned this bike up, put it on Facebook Marketplace, and it didn't sell until about a week later, and that was the most painful week, because I remember being like, man, I just want to take it to the track just one more time. Let's just go one more time. But then I was like, no, because if I crash and I break something on it. And looking back in hindsight, I still don't know why God got me out of it. I don't know if it's because I would have gotten injured, and maybe that would have screwed my plans, because as you know, when they go in the Air Force and do the PJ stuff, if I would have gotten paralyzed in an accident, whole plan would have been abolished. And I don't know if maybe being around that crowd of guys wasn't going to help me, because obviously the motocross crowd is a bunch of very cocky, ego kind of dudes, because you have to be in that sport. And that was just one of the events where it wasn't easy. It sucked, and I didn't see why he wanted me to do it at the time. But in hindsight, you kind of start piecing things together, and I'm sure that happened with Houston. When he called you to Houston, you had no idea why you were getting called there. But then after, you're like, okay, well, all that hardship, seeing that out there, being able to see the struggle, see the pain, and still grow my relationship with God.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Learned a lot of beneficial things in those hard days.
Exactly.
So,
and you mentioned evangelism.
Yeah.
I want to dive into that because I think that's something with our generation too, that I don't think I was the only one who used to not be a very social person. I think there's a lot of people that aren't social, and I don't know whether that be phones, social media, video games, where we don't have to communicate face to face anymore. And it's something that I think Gen Z definitely struggles with. But I think if we can get through that, it would be such a powerful thing. Like, what are some of the best stories you have of evangelism, or some of the best pieces of advice, how you would train when y'all go do these mission trips, how you train these kids, how you prepare to send them out?
It's so easy on a mission trip to go and do evangelism. And I think it's because we have in our head that we'll never see some of these people again, which I think leads to the root of why most teenagers, and most really adults too, I would say, myself included, have fear of evangelism, is because we're worried about what people think. We're worried about if we're going to offend them. We're worried about, is it going to be uncomfortable? How are they going to respond? And I think that's across the board. That would probably be the number one fear of everybody in evangelism. And for me, I think the practical side of it is this, is you don't have to come out there and walk into a coffee shop and just start blasting people with Jesus. You don't have to. You can. You can go and preach in the coffee shop if you want to. Probably not the most effective route. But the relationship side with people, digging in deep with people, being able to comfort people, and just being a part of their life is what I found is some of the most successful evangelism tools. It's just being real, being with a person. You don't have to know all the answers. You don't have to know. I'm not the smart. You know this. I'm not the smartest tool in the shed. Like, I'm a very practical guy, and I want something that I understand and, and can do. And so when I'm sharing with Jesus, like, the easiest route that I personally find is whenever we're eating at a restaurant, or whenever we're at the cash register at the grocery store, it's, hey, how are you doing today? Cool. Hey, is there anything I can pray for you for today? We're about to pray if it's at dinner. Hey, we're about to pray for the food. And 7 times out of 10, probably, they're going to share something. And then possibly even open up more to, so what do you believe? Or why'd you ask me that? Or whatever it is. And it's just amazing the stories that you can have when you just lean into what you're called to do as a believer, and that's to talk to people about Jesus. I mean, it shouldn't be hard because it's literally our life and our identity and our eternity, but it is because of the fear of people, fear of man, and what they're going to say. But the worst thing that anybody's going to say to us is, hey, shut up. Hey, I don't believe in Jesus. I don't believe, whatever it is. You're doing what you're called to do. And like, ultimately, that's glorifying God in the best way possible, is following his command to go and tell. And so that's why it's such an important thing in my life, and hopefully in some of our students' lives, a lot of our students' lives as well. And there's nothing more powerful than seeing somebody go from death to life, because when you see somebody whose eternity has been changed and impacted, it changes you. It really does. And so you realize it's not that big of a deal to talk to somebody about Jesus. So,
and I love how you mentioned, because I think that's something I struggle with too.
Yeah, is
obviously the fear of their response.
Right.
How are they going to respond?
Right.
And it's easy for me to tell myself that I don't care what other people think.
We all do. Yeah. We all do. Yeah.
And sometimes I don't. I mean, sometimes, like spring break, when you're at the beach and you're not going to see these people ever again,
right,
and you're just chatting, you're extroverted, you're having conversations. Well, someone's not going to like you.
Yeah.
I had it happen at spring break. This
yeah.
one guy did not like me. He had a problem with me. And I just remember waking up the next day, and I was hanging out with some of the people the night before, and they were talking about him. And I was like, but not everybody's going to like you.
Nope.
Nope. Like, you can't expect everybody to like you.
They don't have to.
They talk about he crucified a perfect man.
Yeah.
If they crucified a perfect man, then how the heck do you expect them to not? Some people are going to but still, I mean, that fear is there for sure.
It's a good word.
Like, I remember, and I get frustrated myself sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I like to pray, like Lord, give me opportunities to spread the gospel, but also give me courage when opportunities arise. Yep. And yet I've still had times. I remember this time I was at Hobby Lobby, and it was probably about a month ago. I was in Hobby Lobby picking up some stuff, and I remember there was this customer who, I guess they're in there a lot, because they know all the workers and all that. And I remember going to a worker to ask where something is, because Hobby Lobby to me is like IKEA. It's just a maze
it's
of
overwhelming.
yeah. Well, the worker was busy. Well, this customer who's in there all the time was like, oh yeah, I can take you to him. And while I was waiting, they were kind of having a conversation. While I was waiting on the worker, they were talking about this surgery that they were getting for cancer. And I think April or May, somewhere around there. This was in March. And so when they were walking me to the beads, I didn't say anything. We were walking to the beads, and then they showed me where they were. I grabbed them. I went to go check out. And as I was in the checkout line, this person was behind me in line. And I didn't say anything. And I got back in my truck, and it didn't even hit me in the store until I got back in my truck. And I was riding home like, oh my God. I was like, I had the perfect opportunity there to ask, like, hey, could I pray for your surgery? Can I pray for your recovery? Can I pray for all this? And I didn't. And that eats you alive sometimes. I'm like, man, I missed an opportunity.
Yeah.
And it sucks because it is something where I think with me, it's just the fear of the response. Because I've gone up to someone before in a restaurant, and I've tried to spread the gospel to them. And I remember talking, and this guy looks up at me, and he just says, he's like, you remember, or you believe in that black magic stuff? And I was like, okay. I was like, but I ended up having a great conversation with this guy for a while. And then I ended up leaving there realizing, okay, like, now I know more about this guy. Now we've just had a personal conversation. So maybe the conversation didn't go like, hey, let me tell you about this guy named Jesus down on the cross. But I have built a relationship, and now you start to see him in the restaurant more. But yeah, I mean, I remember getting called off guard. That was like my first time ever evangelizing, and I got called black magic.
There you
I was
go.
like, okay.
You never know what you get. That's also kind of the fun part. It's kind of like, it's an adrenaline rush. It really is. Like, okay, what's going to happen?
So I
Where's
always
this
tell people, I
conversation
was like,
gonna go?
and I don't know if you can agree with this, but like, my heart never stops racing.
Oh, yeah.
Even anytime I go up to do like a message, like I ask for a
Absolutely.
revival or something, people will be like, man, you look calm. I was like, no, I was like, my heart was like this
Pumping.
the entire time.
Yep.
And I tell people sometimes with evangelism, I'm like, well, that's not going to go away. Like, I think people think the more they do it, it's going to go away. Well, chances are, if it's going away, you're probably leaning more towards a script.
That's a
than
good
you
word.
are
Very
a
good word, yeah.
conversation or relationship.
Yep.
There's been many times where conversations are going to be embarrassing.
Yep.
They're going to be awkward.
Yep.
And you just got to address that. You got to realize, but it's easy for me to say it.
Yeah,
and
that's
it's
right.
hard because
It's
I'm
hard to
sure
do.
there's
It's so much harder to
there's
do.
going to be more opportunities where God's putting someone right there, and I can go ask to pray for them,
Absolutely.
and I don't do it, and I feel horrible about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good word. Great words. Always room to improve. Always room to improve. So.
Exactly. And you mentioned also doing mission trips away, and I know y'all really touch on this a lot,
Yeah.
and I love the way y'all touch on it, of where a mission trip doesn't have to be
Correct.
in Africa. It doesn't have to be in
Correct.
Costa Rica or Atlanta. A mission trip can be right here,
Right.
right across the street. Ryder and
right.
Cohen mentioned that in the
Yeah.
last episode, and it was a great way
Yeah.
to mention it, where mission trips can always
Yep.
be happening.
Where
But
your
it's-
feet are.
Exactly. But it's easy when you're not going to see these people ever again.
Yep.
And I think that is such a big motivator
Mm-hmm.
in human life. I think so many people, I can't remember I believe it was, is your life more motivated by fear or more motivated by ambitions? Something like that. Like, what motivates your life more? What makes you make this decision when you wake up? Is it, hey, I'm gonna go walk on a treadmill? Are you doing that because you want to train for an event? Or are you doing that because maybe you don't want to be out of shape? Maybe you're afraid of what other people think.
Yeah.
Like, what motivates your life? And that was such a big thing, where when you really look back at, hey, why am I doing the things that I'm doing? If you're doing it for other people, that shell's going to crack as soon as you're in a room by yourself.
Absolutely.
And that's something that's hard with me.
Absolutely.
I'm sure other Christians may struggle with it, of that imposter syndrome,
Yep.
where you feel like, man, am I just putting a show on for everyone? Am I really this person? Like, who am I? And you can start going down this rabbit hole.
Yeah,
And I think
no
that's
doubt.
Satan's whole mission,
No
is to make
doubt.
you go down that rabbit hole, to where
No
you
doubt.
start to think, okay, maybe I'm not this person.
Yep.
And that's not true.
Yep. He wants you to question everything.
Do you know Philip Mitchell?
Yeah. Bill Bailey, out of
Yes, I
Atlanta.
saw one of his sermons the other day, and it really struck me, because it goes exactly onto this. He was talking about how, like, there's been times in his life where he's been struggling with things behind the scenes, and yet he'll be up on a stage preaching, and he's still struggling with them behind the scenes. And it's like, I talked about it in one of my last episodes of this person. I believe they said something about, it was a video, and they were talking about Bryce Crawford. And they're like, I want a man like Bryce Crawford. And I was like, well, be careful, because who do you think Bryce Crawford is? Do you think he's this perfect person that's got everything figured out because of this image that gets portrayed online, which isn't his fault, that's just what people post. but what does he tell his wife in private? Like, what is he dealing with in private that you don't know about?
Yeah.
And I think
point.
it's very easy with social media nowadays.
Yeah. Everybody's struggling with something. You know,
Yes.
it doesn't matter if you're the pastor of a church, it doesn't matter what. Like, everybody's struggling somewhere. And so, another good reason not to ever put people up on high pedestals, because
Yeah.
definitely good to have mentors and people, but like there's definitely a fine line, I think, because we've always have to stay in check till the day we die. We have to stay in check, because I was reading 1 John today, in 1 John 1, like the enemy, like he's going to use whatever tactics. We have to stay alert, and we have to be on guard and ready to go, because he can use different schemes, different ways at any time. So
I think there's been many times in my life where you find a mentor, and then maybe a couple months into being around that mentor, you realize, okay, well, I didn't know that. Like it's very easy to see people as perfect, and no one's perfect.
no, nobody's perfect.
No one's perfect. But I loved how you said everybody's struggling with things. I read a couple of psychology books, and one of them talked about that, where, and in the high school space, bullying nowadays obviously isn't as big as I would imagine maybe it was back before social media, because now people pull out their phones and they'll video it.
Yeah.
But when you still see it all the time, you'll see people. It's the only example I can think of right now. Like what's your bench? Like how much do you bench, man? And it's like they're trying to figure out. They're trying to compare themselves to people around them, because deep down inside, this is what the book said. Deep down inside, humans, we are all just a reflection of our insecurities.
Yeah. Great word.
Like the way that and that's another thing that goes back to what's motivating you, fear or ambition. Is it fear of, okay, well, and I think this is something that I've dealt with. Around middle school, I had a big, very weird build. I had my dad's genetics, but I didn't work out. And so when you have these long arms and the shoulder and the chest, that was basically man boobs, because I didn't hit chest day at all. And I had this belly that went out, and I just had like horrible physique, horrible posture, all this stuff. And I just remember like always being scared of like, man, I don't want to look like, and you grow up around like my dad, who's a bigger guy, like I don't want to look like this. And so it starts leading into, okay, I'm going to start working out. But here's the great thing that I learned, was that when I started working out around 13, I didn't stick with it at all, because my motivation was fear. Because all I cared about was what other people saw. So when I wake up in the morning or I don't want to go to the gym, and I'm like, okay, well, no one's going to see that I'm not going to the gym, so who cares? And then you don't go to the gym and you get out of it for months, because that's what's motivating you.
Yeah.
And with your walk with God, I think that is something we see so much now. I see it all the time, and it's sad. I always like to talk to people and say, like, hey, social media is not number one priority. Like, me posting clips online, me doing these podcasts is not number one priority at all.
Yeah.
I could stop all of this, and I could go, like, when I started my relationship and I started reading my Bible and praying before I could start driving, so for about 8 months, I didn't go to church.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't drive, my family didn't go to church, or my parents couldn't because of work, and I didn't go. And I just read my Bible every night, prayed every night, and my relationship still grew over those 8 months, and my relationship was great. And then I started driving, and then I started going to church more. And now I've seen both my parents have started to go to church now. My dad is incredible. I think he's like almost 130 days sober.
Wow.
So he's going on that. I mean, I just got his truck. They just surprised me with his truck, and he has Sirius XM on there. And he always, anytime I'm in there, he has it on the message, Sirius XM, the message. And it's like, you start to see, I never would have imagined this, of just walking out this journey, the effect that it can have on the people around you.
Yes.
And I'd be lying if I said it didn't really touch me and amaze me to see this grow.
So cool.
And it's incredible.
Man.
But it just goes to like what's motivating your relationship? Is it because you want everyone to see?
Yeah.
Or is it because maybe you're at the deepest of the deeps in life?
Yep.
And this one guy said it. I'm going to stop here. I want to
Yeah.
keep this conversation going. But he said, God shows up in your lowest points when all you have to look is up. You can't look down anymore. And that is
So good.
a great way to say it.
So good. Thief of comparison. I mean, it just will kill everything. But how you live your life, I think that's such a great point you made. Like, your family's been impacted by how you live. Your friends have been impacted how you live. You don't walk like you used to. You don't talk like you used to. Like, things are different. And it's just such a good reminder that people are always looking at us. People are always watching us as Christians, how we act, how we respond. And I think you also said, I'm going to go back just real quick. I know we're going to close, but talking on the social media thing, such a powerful tool, yes.
But dangerous.
But so dangerous. And for me personally, it was really dangerous in my own walk, just because it was the thief of comparison. And mine was silly. It was student ministry. I would see other student pastors and things that they were doing, and I would start judging them, or I would start saying nasty things in my head about them, or whatever it was, and I was caught myself realizing we're all on the same team. What's going on here? And I was realizing even in my own self, well, why was I posting things? What was I doing? And none of it I was posting was for God's glory. It was all for my glory, all from people to say, wow, you're doing a great job. Wow, you do all these things. And what's in the approval of man? And so the Lord put on my heart that it was like, hey, that's a stronghold in your life. And so praise the Lord, I'm 2.5 years sober on social media and it's amazing how you don't really miss those things. Yeah. And I've logged on a time or two to go check to see if I can find somebody for something, but the minute you do, you're just like, it's just, why are you posting this? Why are people posting these things? Like it's just so much. It leads us to be so self-absorbed when we're on these platforms because of that's what they're geared to do, is to make money off of you, And so my advice, especially to Gen Z, but it's not just Gen Z, it's the grandparents, it's parents, it's all of us, that we have to be careful. It is a fantastic tool, a good platform to use to be able to get the gospel out more. But it doesn't need to be, we just got to be careful that it does not become the God of our lives, of how we view ourselves on social media compared to how we really are in real life. And so don't let it steal the joy.
Exactly. And I loved how you mentioned, because I actually was thinking about this too, was how you said, and when you separate from it, like you've been 2 years clean from it, and you start to look back and man, why did I do that?
Yeah.
What's the point of that?
Yep.
I remember, I don't know how long it's been now. I still have Snapchat.
Mm-hmm.
I always joke and say I use Snapchat for the chat part, not the snap part, because I don't see the point in snapping anymore. Now, used to, I did, because you have this streak, and you have this idea of and people don't understand it. You try to explain it to someone who still does it, and it's like, and I completely understand this with addictions in life, of you go numb, you go blind to it, and you cannot see it from another perspective until you're out of it. And once you're out of it, you're like, man, why do I do that? Yeah. And with Snapchat, where I remember it, where you would send a snap to someone, and then they would send a snap back, and in your mind, you're thinking, oh, someone's thinking about me.
That's right.
Someone cares. That's just not true. I mean,
No.
I don't know about you, or I don't know about other people, but I just go on Snapchat when I used to do it, and I would just view everyone's like that, and then I would just send one snap to my whole list, and it was the same picture. But you get out of, and I cannot wait until I graduate from high school. Yeah. I'm going to have to pass the podcast on to someone younger, or someone that can carry it on, because after high school, deleting all social medias, getting out of that side of things. I'll be getting out of the media and camera side of stuff too. Okay. But that's exciting to just leave that all behind. Yeah. Social media is definitely, it's with anything, anything that you get rid of. Alcohol. Yep. I mean, it is.
There's freedom. It truly feels like freedom. Exactly. I'm not chained to it anymore.
And people see it and they're like, I don't know how you have fun when you're. I mean, I had it happen at spring break. Yeah. Almost every night we were at spring break, I was on the beach, or I was at a house, and there was people all around, people drinking, people at this party. You're talking to people, you're hanging out with people, and I remember this first night meeting this guy, who first night he had been drinking and he was just out of it, and then the second night he went back out there. And he decided, I'm not drinking anything tonight. He's like, I'm just going to go out here and just try to have fun. And I remember the whole night, he was just like, man, he's like, I feel like I'm so boring and all this. And eventually at the end of the night, I looked at him and I was like, do you think I've been drinking anything this whole time? He's like, yeah. And I was like, no. I was like, man, I haven't had a drink this entire time. He's like, really? He's like, so you don't drink anything? I was like, no. It's like, you can have fun without alcohol. Yeah. Yeah. But people get so caught up in this idea because that's what everyone does, right?
Exactly right.
Everyone drinks, apparently. Everyone needs alcohol to have fun, to be confident, and that's just not the case. No. But you get stuck in this trap. And you think it's freedom. It feels like freedom when you can drink and get all confident and talk to everybody. But it's not. No. Because it's controlling your life. Exactly. And once you get separated from it and you start to look at it from an outside perspective, you realize how much of a grip it has on your life.
That's a good word. Great word. Great wisdom in that. I think you're wise beyond your years.
I don't know. I always ask myself, I don't know if I'm wise or if I'm just imposter. It's
That's
an
right.
imposter syndrome.
That's right. That's right. Cool. I think a lot of you and think a lot about what God's done in your life, and it's pretty neat to sit back and watch and see the impact you're making on kids right now in your grade, but also those younger grades right now, and encouragement that Gen Z is an incredible generation.
I think
So,
Gen Z's got great potential.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
just because of how the way that our world's going right now,
Yep.
with a lot of persecution, it's not like it was back in, I'd say, the 80s,
Yep.
where everyone was expected to be Christian.
Yep,
Things have kind of flipped now.
completely.
The world is in a frenzy. Everybody's desperate for identity,
Mm-hmm.
desperate to fill that void inside of them that
Absolutely.
was put there for only God to fill,
Mm-hmm.
and they're trying to fill it with all these other things and all these other identities, and it's leading us into an anarchy.
Yep.
And so I think this generation, like I said, if we can come out of this alive,
Yep.
it's going to be a very strong generation. That was
100%.
one of the motivations of starting this podcast, and obviously it doesn't reach a lot of
Yep.
people, but it reaches people
Yeah.
it needs to reach.
That's right.
And
It's a
that's
good
the
word.
important thing.
It's a good word.
Yeah,
It's a good word. Appreciate you having me on here today.
absolutely. I'm excited.
that's
First
nice. Yeah.
wise guest.
Oh, wow. That is starting at the bottom of the totem pole. So it can only go up from here.
Yeah. Shoot, I think I want to have Mr. Molinax on at some
Oh,
point.
yeah. Yeah.
Planning to have him out here. That's gonna probably be a
Oh, he's
2
awesome.
or 3 part episode.
I look up to him a lot. He's awesome. Man full of the spirit.
Oh
So,
yes, absolutely.
very encouraging.
Well, yeah, man.
Well, cool.
Great episode.
Well, good. Well, thank